I think the UK has made a lot of contribution to science in general and haematology in particular from their work in developing countries and with partnerships with developing country doctors. So the first real discovery about 60 years ago, I think, was Denis Burkitt, who discovered a lymphoma, which is a lymph node cancer, in children in East Africa. And he had an interest in epidemiology. So he made a link between this cancer in children and malaria infection, which at the time he didn't really have the technology to prove. But subsequently, some work was done in Nigeria in the mid-1960s, where they managed to find one of the genetic abnormalities that's related to cancers. So that was one of the first studies where cancer genetics and the fact that chromosome abnormalities were related to cancer really started becoming of interest. The next big discovery, I would say, was around the mid-1970s, and there was a lot of work then done on the red cells. Red cell abnormalities are very common in malarious areas, and it was recognised that they seem to be related to malaria. So there was a lot of work done on how malaria interacts with the red cell, and it interacts in many different ways, but in particular, a person called Luciola Sato, who spent some time in Nigeria, then at the Hammersmith, he did a lot of work on these genetic red cell abnormalities to discover how they actually protect against malaria. So they've persisted in the African population and elsewhere because they're protective against malaria. So although they have some downsides, there's also quite a lot of positive sides to having these red cell abnormalities in the population. And then I think more recently, there's been a lot of work, again, based on red cells, but particularly around sickle cell and thalassemia, done by Professor Sir David Weatherall, who unfortunately died only last year. But he left a huge legacy, particularly around his unit in Oxford. But globally, he mapped a lot of the hemoglobinopathy disorders, so the sickle cells and thalassemias. So he's given us a lot of insight about which particular groups are at risk of different types of genetic abnormalities. And he also mentored a lot of other researchers and generated huge amounts of research, so been highly respected in the haematology community in the UK.